A warm welcome. You're watching Eye on Africa. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-BI. These are the top stories on the continent. The French far-right leader Marine Le Pen holds talks with Chad's President Idriss Deby on the fight against terror in Africa. Chadian opposition members, though, have criticised the visit. 12 months added to his sentence, Congo's former Vice President Jean-Pierre Bemba gets more jail time and a fine for bribing witnesses during his war crimes trial at the ICC. And football star Samuel Eto'o visits his native Cameroon in his new role as UNICEF ambassador. His aim is to improve living conditions for women and children. But first, on a rare visit to Africa, the French far-right leader Marine Le Pen has been holding talks with Chad's President Idriss Deby. The National Front leader is on a two-day visit to Chad to meet French soldiers stationed there with the anti-militant unit Barkhane. Well, Le Pen, who's a front-runner in the French presidential race, has said she and Deby discussed cooperation in the fight against terror in Africa. The Chadian opposition, though, has condemned the visit, as France 24's Nicolas Germain reports.
After meeting soldiers on a French base in Chad, Marine Le Pen visited a hospital in the capital, N'Djamena. During her trip, she vowed to end France-Afrique, the murky relationship between Paris and its former African colonies. She said she wanted more cooperation with French-speaking nations.
Cooperation between France and Africa must focus on several sectors: health, education, agriculture and defence. We are all trying to guarantee the safety of our people.
Her visit was criticised by Chad's opposition leader.
Mrs. Le Pen must not be treated with so much respect in our country. She is from the far right. Her father built her party, which is against immigrants, immigrant workers, especially black ones.
In the capital, many Chadians were against her visit.
It's a scandal. She doesn't want black people in France, and then she comes here. What does she want here?
We are against this visit. She hates black people. She's a racist. She's not welcome in Africa, not welcome in Chad.
Marine Le Pen has nothing to do here in Chad. We wanted to protest, but we weren't allowed to.
On Tuesday, Marine Le Pen had met Chadian President Idriss Deby. He's an ally of France in the struggle against jihadists in the Sahel region. Deby's been in power for nearly 3 decades.
In other news, Congo's former Vice President Jean-Pierre Bemba has received an additional 12 months on his prison sentence for manipulating key witnesses during his war crimes trial at the International Criminal Court. Well, Bemba's already serving 18 years for war crimes committed by his soldiers during a 2002 coup in the Central African Republic. The verdict and sentence are the first of their kind in the history of the ICC. France 24's Fernand Vantet reports from The Hague.
Jean-Pierre Bemba will spend an additional year in jail and pay a fine of 300,000 euros. Now, that's after the court decided that he and 4 members of his legal team extensively coached witnesses. They told them what to say, they told them to lie, and they paid them for it. Now, the sentence handed down varied in length. 3 members of the legal team received sentences between 6 months and 2 years, but the heavy punishment was for Ame Kilolo, the lead counsel in this case. He received 2.5 years of jail time and a fine of 30,000 euros. Now, all of these sentences are suspended in light of the long pre-arrest these men endured, almost a year. That is not the case, however, for Jean-Pierre Bemba. He did see 1 year added on to that already lengthy 18-year sentence that he is serving for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Now, this is the first of this kind of conviction at the ICC, but it will not be the last. There are other cases in the pipeline.
March 22nd is World Water Day, and NGOs have warned that almost a third of sub-Saharan Africans are still without access to safe drinking water. Well, with rising temperatures and drought leaving millions at risk of dehydration, aid agencies have urged African governments to make clean water more widely available. Severely limited access to water endangers lives, increasing the risk of deadly disease.
Why is safe water so important for nutrition? Because if you don't have safe water, you are liable to catch either a waterborne disease or get diarrhea. A simple bout of diarrhea can induce malnutrition in a matter of days, and if that malnutrition is severe, the child will die.
Opponents of Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe have been demonstrating against what they say are efforts to fix presidential elections scheduled for 2018. Opposition parties have called for the head of the Election Commission, Rita Makaru, to step down, accusing her of conspiring to help the president win another term in office. 93-year-old Mugabe has been in power in Zimbabwe since 1980. Here's what opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai had to say at today's protests.
Every time we go to election, it is contested. Every time we go to election, it is a dispute. Why should we have a character of an election which is violent and which is always dependent on cohesion and intimidation?
Police in southwest Nigeria say at least 46 people have been killed and dozens of others injured this month during fighting between rival ethnic groups. Violence erupted on March the 7th between local Yoruba and Hausa people in the city of Ife in Osun. Authorities say they arrested 20 suspects in connection with the fighting. Nigeria, which is home to 180 million people, has some 250 different ethnic groups. And finally, the African football star Samuel Eto'o has been crowned the 2017 UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. Ahead of his retirement from professional football, the striker's been dedicating his time to humanitarian work in Africa. On a brief visit to his native Cameroon this week, the footballer delighted his young fans.
The emotion was too much for this young fan who still can't believe he managed to touch his hero. More than 2,000 excited students stormed Yaoundé's sports arena, impatient to meet their idol. Samuel Eto'o, the new UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, is on a brief visit home.
Merci Samuel, tu es le meilleur.
The African football star was clearly happy to play big brother to his young fans.
Do not leave school for anything in the world. You are our future. You're the most precious thing our country has.
12-year-old Kerry plans to heed the call of her hero.
I'm going to try and work really hard at school. I'm going to make myself get better grades on my homework so that my parents will be proud of me.
A few kilometres away in Yaoundé suburb, the star footballer made a surprised visit at this rehabilitation centre for street children and juvenile prisoners.
For our women, for our little sisters, give us some time. We will work as fast as possible to find you a building.
Ahead of his retirement from professional football, the striker's been dedicating more and more of his time to social projects like this that benefit children in Africa.
It's important for me and for UNICEF that all the kind souls who believe in Cameroon and who believe in Africa reach out to these children.
13-year-old Talon will never forget the day he met Samuel Eto'o. He dreams of following in his footsteps.
I want to become a footballer like Samuel Eto'o, to travel the world like him, to be a footballer like him. It makes me want to get ahead like him.
Whatever Eto'o has planned once he retires from football, he's put his popularity at the service of UNICEF as its new Goodwill Ambassador, starting in Cameroon.
Samuel Eto'o on a brief visit to Cameroon there. You are up to date. Coming up next, more international headlines. Stay tuned to France 24.
نقاش فرانس 24 جدل الآن وحديث وتعليق من وفي كل مكان.
France 24, c'est une passerelle entre les cultures, c'est la diversité.
It's also a great way of sharing it and discussing it on social media.
We give a voice to women and girls, whoever they are, wherever they are.
هل تعرفون باريس؟ أحقاً تعرفونها؟ تابعوا France 24 لمعرفة المزيد.
Tout ce que vous avez toujours voulu savoir sur l'Europe, c'est sur notre chaîne.